Hello. Welcome in, everyone, to the Fantasy Live Show. Kendall Valenzuela here, and I am so excited today because not only is it a Thor Thursday, but we have the one and only Jake Trowbridge with us. So we're going to have them join us right now. Hi, guys. How's it going, Thor? How you doing? Welcome in.
I'm doing well, Kendall. Good to be here.
There we go. And Jake, well, welcome in. I mean, it's chaos. You're doing a show. I think this is your first show with Thor, right? It has to be.
It is. And I know this for a fact because I've been tracking it every day for the last year, just waiting for this opportunity.
I love it. It's a dynamic duo that everyone knew that they needed between you and Thor Nystrom. So I'm excited to get into it with you guys today. We're obviously all in our gear today. I'm in mourning, actually. We're recording this on a Wednesday. And just so people know, my heart has been broken at least twice today. About an hour ago, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf might be leaving. So just, I don't want to talk about it. I just got to let you guys know. Thor, I hope your latest mock draft that's coming out is going to make me feel a little bit better.
We're gonna send some help for those receivers that are going out the door there in Seattle. And I figured I'd dress up my first show with Jake, so I had to put on the JJ McCarthy winter whiteout jersey.
Here we go. You have a JJ McCarthy jersey already? I love that. I know you'd love JJ McCarthy, so I should have guessed that. Jake, what are you wearing today? Since we're just going through it.
I've got a throwback Randall Cobb here. That's all that I can represent currently. I don't want to make too much of an investment into a current Packers wide receiver. I want to stick to an old school fella.
All right, fair. Let's see if anyone can earn Jake's love and trust this season and see if he can get a jersey. Maybe Devontae Adams. We'll talk about that later. But before we get into it, it is a Thor Thursday presented by DraftKings. So let's go through our mock draft. All right, it is a post-combine rookie dynasty mock draft. There's only 3 of us, so we are going to, be alternating that way. We don't have 12 people picking today. And Jake, you're the new guy here with Thor, so it was only fitting that we gave you the first overall pick. So you are on the clock. Who are you taking right here?
I feel so honored to be able to make this selection because honestly, with this class, it feels as standard as it can get for me when I'm looking at the 101. Just a little peek into my strategy when I'm drafting rookies in Dynasty. The 101, it's obviously a very pristine spot. And typically, I tend to favor wide receivers over running backs because of landing spot dependency. And we haven't experienced the NFL draft just yet. So most running backs I have some question marks about, and those will be answered with the NFL draft. The only guy I have 0 questions about is Ashton Genty. So at the 101, he will be my selection. Nice. He really kind of feels like, the most sure thing. I think the worst possible outcome for him would be like Frank Gore with better pass catching chops. And I will take that mitigated risk all day at the 101.
I like it. I mean, it feels like Thor Ashton Genty is like the guy that you want to go and get. I have nothing to say because if I can get Ashton Genty every time in a Dynasty rookie mock draft right now, I would want to get him.
Yeah, I like Jake's floor comp there. My comp is LaDainian Tomlinson. This for sure he's the number 1 pick in these dynasty drafts. You get the receiving utility in addition to being the most prolific tackle breaker that we have seen come into the NFL over the past decade. But that was a guy as a receiver who took over for Marvin Mims Jr. as the slot receiver on his high school team as a junior. So he didn't switch back to running back until his senior year of high school. And then he blew up. But 2023, we got to see everything we needed from Ashton Genty as a receiver. And last year they funneled it all into his touches as a rusher. But yeah, this is one of the best running back prospects we have seen in the last 20 years enter the NFL.
Yeah, I'm already jealous of Jake's draft, but that's fine. We've got a long ways to go here. So I get the number 2 pick because Thor, we just have to make your life as hard as we can going up against you in these kind of mock drafts. So I'm on the clock now with the second overall pick. And while I don't usually talk about Arizona anything because we are a Sun Devil household, I will talk about Tetaroa McMillan. And I feel like that's the way that I have to go here because like Jake was talking about wide receivers in Dynasty rookie drafts, because Ashton Genty's off the board, I do. How can you not like Tetaroa McMillan? I mean, from everything, Thor, that you and I have been talking about for the last couple weeks, he is the top wide receiver in this class. He's, like you said, long, got that huge catch radius, and just seems like a ready NFL ready wide receiver already. So the only thing that I think I worry about with Teteroa McMillan is that these top wide receivers sometimes are drafted to teams that have, lower tiered quarterbacks. And so I can hope that maybe the best landing spot for him is maybe a New England Patriot, him in a New England Patriots jersey, and hoping that he gets with Drake May. I know that sometimes that might not be the case. I know, Thor, in your last mock draft, you had him going to the Arizona Cardinals, which I also wouldn't hate. Now I wouldn't hate any of these Seahawks getting Teteroa McMillan either, but that probably will not happen based on where they're drafting right now. But yeah, I'm gonna go Teteroa McMillan here. I like this one.
Yeah, it's definitely a good pick. And with the receiver class where it drops off after the top guy, McMillan is in a tier of his own with the receiver class. I think with the second pick, you could consider McMillan with the guy that I'm about to, that I'm going to be taking at 3 and Omarion Hampton. But there's an argument there. However, the running back, and this is a discussion that is going to be happening inside war rooms at the end of April, of this running back class is so stacked, and the receiver class, it drops off so fast. Should that push up a guy like McMillan? I think in your shoes, Kendall, I think I would have taken McMillan at 2 as well, because there is that big drop off after him. Whereas there are running backs that we like in these drafts into the 3rd round, right? Whereas the receivers, you really drop off quick. So I like getting McMillan quick. He measured into the combine at essentially the exact same dimensions as Drake London. He has a very similar game to Drake London. So yeah, wherever he ends up going there, the Raiders are interesting. He'd take over wide receiver 1 there right away. Carolina's interesting. They already have the interesting young receiving core. They probably could use the prototypical number 1 boundary alpha, and then everyone else would sort of lock into place. But yeah, wherever he goes, he's going to be pounded with targets early.
I like it. So it sounds like you kind of gave us a hint at who you're going with next, because you said it's a deep running back class. So with the 3rd overall pick, who you taking?
Yeah, I think with these top 3 picks, the only person who had an option was you. Jake didn't have an option. You have to take Genty with the first pick. And the second pick, it becomes binary between the 2 guys. You made my decision for me, Kendall. If you had taken Hampton, then I would have gone McMillan. But I go with Omarion Hampton here. Omarion Hampton, he proved the speed stuff at the big size at the NFL Combine. He measured in 221 pounds and ran the 4.46, 96 percentile size adjusted athlete. In my scouting report, I comped him to Deuce McAllister. I'm starting to see that comp more out there now. I think those guys run very similar to each other. You have the big back who has that straight line speed, and it's sort of like a bullet train thing. They'll pick through the line when they're in the wreckage, but looking for that straight line once you get out there into the 2nd, 3rd level, because he can outrun defensive backs, Omarion Hampton, at 221 pounds.
A Minnesota Viking potentially, or no? Are you still holding out for Cam Scadaboo there?
Maybe, yeah. On day 2, yeah. I don't think so, because the Vikings, you sit at 24, and I think with the Vikings not tagging Sam Darnold, so you're not going to get the tag and trade. The Vikings only sit with 4 picks in the draft. You're at 24, you have a 3rd round comp, you have 2 5th round picks. They are essentially handcuffed into having to trade down. I don't think the Vikings have another option. I would be surprised if they end up picking in the 1st round. And I think Hampton will be going before then. If we get a second running back in the 1st round in April, it's going to be Omarion Hampton.
All right, Jake, you're on the clock now with the 4th overall pick. Everyone is still jealous of you with Ashton Genty over there 1st overall. So where are you going next?
I mean, the good news is I can't lose anymore. I've already won this, so everything else is just gravy. But at the 104, there is a guy that stands still a bit, I won't say head and shoulders above everybody else, but shoulders at least above everybody else. And that is Emeka Egbuka, monster from Ohio State, the most career catches of any receiver from Ohio State. No real red flags for me, unless you believe that he peaked as a sophomore, which I don't. I don't subscribe to that. I will admit the upside is admittedly not quite as big with Egbuka as some of the other wide receivers in this class, but he does feel a lot safer to me than them. I think some of the throwback comps, which I'm so fond of apparently today, I would say we've got a Jarvis Landry-esque type of pace maybe for this guy. And I think people forget when Landry was in Miami, he was a set it and forget it PPR kind of guy. And I think that we could be looking at maybe a 2.0 of that. So again, not a ton of upside, but I love his safety.
I like that, Jake, because that's always the conversation when we get into these dynasty rookie drafts that Thor had already mentioned is like, okay, this wide receiver class might not be as deep, and so you already go out and you get Genty, and then you go out and get someone who's kind of similar to a little bit to Burden there. So I like this one. I'm a little bit jealous, and it feels like he could shoot up Jake draft boards a little bit, just depending on if he lands with a team where he can kind of quickly get a high target share. It could be a little bit different in the next coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. I have about 10 spots that I'd be completely fine with him landing in. Packers, maybe, hey, do the right thing and trade up and get this guy and declutter that wide receiver room.
I like it. I like it. Well, since you took, you took someone I was eyeballing, it's fine. This is just going to be how it goes the rest of the day. And I'm already accepting that, Jake. I'm going to go with the 5th overall pick and go with Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. I will do that for our producer, Matthew Swing, as well. But he's just, I don't know, he's just the next great slot wide receiver. I'm excited to see kind of how his game shapes up. When you look at everything that's been going on, he's been excellent at avoiding tackles, making yards after the catch. 9.1 yard average target depth is just something that I just want a piece of it. And so I've seen him mocked a little bit to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm just really excited for him. And I know, Thor, you and I have talked about Luther Burden a good amount these past few weeks. So he just seems like someone where these first few picks just seem like no-brainers, and I'm excited to get a wide receiver that should excel in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's a guy who stabilized his draft stock in Indianapolis. You know, there have been some whispers of things going the other way heading up to the combine. You saw him drop out of the first round, a couple of those prominent mock drafts, but he goes to Indianapolis and runs the 4.41 at 206 pounds and 6 feet. So it's a decent sized slot receiver. He proved the concept of the speed. Guy's electric with the ball in his hands. I mean, that's what it is. The Missouri offense, you manufactured him a lot of touches within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. One question about his game is, can he win consistently downfield? We didn't see that in that scheme quite as much, but manufacture the touches for him intermediate and just watch him go. Find the space for him, hit him on the hands, lead him into space, and he's going to do damage after the catch. Arizona is a great fit. You know, you just mentioned that they have their boundary receiver set. You have the tight end that takes coverage attention away in the intermediate on the other side. That's a perfect situation for Burden. The space will be there for him. Cincinnati, of course, very similar. You have the awesome boundary receivers there. You can't roll coverage resources over. So you're going to find Luther Burden on the slow-footed, strong safety or somebody like that and with no help. That's the situation we're looking for with Luther Burden in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that's the only concern is if he lands on a team that restricts him to only playing in the slot. Like that's the one thing, and I hope that it doesn't happen, but something to watch out for. Thor, you're on the clock now, and we're just getting rolling. So now you've got the 6th overall pick, and you've already gone with Omarion Hampton at running back from North Carolina. So who are you taking here?
I'm going to take the draft's best player in Travis Hunter, the Colorado demigod of a prospect. Now, I know that people in the dynasty drafts are afraid of Travis Hunter because it's like we've seen the cornerback guy that plays some offense before. How many snaps is he going to get? That kid initially, he's going to play offense, and he is going to be a big part of whatever offense he goes to right away. The only question as a rookie is how many snaps can his body take but before the injury risk starts to go way up. I think it's going to be between 40 to 50% as a rookie. But I think, and so you might think, well, 40, 50% of the snaps, then why would you take him over, some of the other receivers that are out there on the board right now? Because when he's on the field, you're going to have a Travis Hunter playbook, and his team is going to pound him with targets when he is. Where you're going to save his snaps, it's on the runs and concepts to other folks. You're bringing Travis Hunter on the field to throw him the ball. He's going to be one of the, if not the number one option when he's on the field for his NFL team as a rookie. He's going to be one of the top 2, but there's several of these teams that could take him where he is immediately going to be the top guy. And, him against, 85% snaps for McMillan maybe as a rookie, something like that. I think more targets are coming Hunter's way when he is on the field for his snaps, like I said. So I think Travis Hunter, it's crazy to say this, I think he's being slept on in dynasty drafts. He is going to be a big-time offensive player in the NFL.
Jake, did you wince? Did you cringe? Do you like this? What do you think?
So many parts of my body clenched when I saw that name come out, because at the 106, there is a point in every draft, and I think it's going to be different for every single league that you participate in, because it's all about risk reward. I mean, for all these guys, but especially for Travis Hunter. And I think that there's a point where no matter what, the risk becomes worth it. I don't know for me that it's 106, because I am nervous. I mean, like you said, Thor, it'd be great if he gets 100%, yards per target. 100% of the time that he's out there, he's catching the ball. That would be wonderful. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about the wear and tear, especially since we're talking about Dynasty and it's just so much coach dependent too. I hope he gets drafted to the team where the coach goes, hey, we're going to use you smart. We're going to use you often. But it is nerve wracking to think about.
I did. I thought I caught that wince on screen. I was like, oh, Jake didn't know what to do there with that 6th overall pick. But now you're on the clock here, 107. Who are you going to go with?
Well, I'm going to go with somebody who is moving up my draft boards because of the man in the middle here, because of Thor. As we talk about post-combine risers, Matthew Golden is one of those guys who's doing that. In truth, this spot for me, when I'm on the clock in my actual Dynasty leagues, there's a part of me that thinks, hey, is this a spot that I try to trade back with some of my league mates to see if I can snatch Golden a few picks later and get some added value? But, we're not doing that here. So I'm more than happy to take Matthew Golden, great deep ball tracker. It was a little bit of a coin flip, I will admit, between this guy and one other fella who I will not name so that we can preserve the competitive nature of this draft. But I'm very excited for him. Obviously ran a super fast, blazing fast 40-yard dash at the combine, and very excited for him to kind of delineate from the rest of the group that I have after him.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. 4.29 40, like you just said, Jake. And Thor, you were there and you talked about your risers, and it felt like when you were talking about Matthew Golden, you kind of said something along the lines of he should be coming out of everyone's name as a riser just because of what he showed at the combine. And now here he is in these mocks, and you think that he is now, locked in first round pick as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he is going in the first round. And the only question becomes, can he get up to wide receiver too? Right? Like him and Burden and Igbuka, you have a 3-horse race there for wide receiver too at this point, running the 4.29. I was just so impressed with Golden's combine. We talked about this when I was in Indy, Kendall, but 2 of his teammates were talking all this noise about how they were going to break Xavier Worthy's record. Matthew Golden didn't say a word about it. He was the one that went and ran the 4.29. The other guys ran way slower than him. And then he just walked it off. After, I'm not doing the jumps. I'm not doing the agilities. I'm just going to make the statement and let it stand for itself, and then we'll do the rest of this stuff in Austin. I just thought it was a really cool combine, and it's a guy whose game, it's not this is the interesting thing. The game's not predicated on his explosion. He gets the separation by toggling his speeds. He's a really, really good route runner, a really crafty route runner. Jake mentioned that he wins downfield. He does. So that's not a question that we have about him. Like, for instance, like a guy like Burden. And Igbuka is just the kill you in the intermediate kind of a guy, JSN type Ohio State slot guy. Whereas Golden, you can do different things with him, and he is also interchangeable. He was talking about this at his podium session, interchangeable between the boundary and slot. And you saw that with his usage at Texas, his usage at Houston. So, that works even, a series in, series out. But it sort of opens up the band of teams that could be the pool of teams that could be interested in you in the first round, right? Like it doesn't matter if they have a hole at boundary or the slot. Matthew Golden could potentially go in there and start for you day one.
It's fine. Just send him to the Seahawks. I don't care. Send any wide receiver that we talk about from here on out to the Seahawks, and I will feel better by the end of this show. So, all right, you took my wide receiver again, Jake. That's totally fine. Everything's fine over here. So I've got the 8th overall pick, and I think since we've been talking about these running backs and how there is no lack of talent in this group, I'm going to go with Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State for this one. For many reasons, like I just said, there's no shortage of talent with these 2025 running backs. And, outside of the top two, I think we're going to see a lot of movement over there for who people have as their, top three, top four, top five running backs. Henderson, when I look at him, the big concern really is if he can play over 65% of the team's offensive snaps. That was something that we had to watch out for in college. Keeping him fully healthy at full strength is going to make him, is going to make or break him in the NFL. So he's not very big either, but I do just really like what we've seen from him and, kind of the role that he can play. Maybe not an NFL workhorse kind of guy, but just someone that I think can really make waves in the NFL. Had played significantly on third down throughout his career, Thor. So someone, again, that we've talked a lot about. So I really do like him as my running back pickup here.
Yeah, Travion Henderson's a home run hitter. He goes into the combine, measured in at 202, but he's bigger than that. He played at Ohio State a little bit over 210, so you're going to see him closer to threshold. I think he wanted to lose some weight for the testing, and he tested great. The 4.43 40 was great. The 1.52 10-yard split was great. 38.5 vertical was one of the best at the position groups. The thing you're talking about, Kendall, that's the only thing with for fantasy owners, because it's Henderson at Ohio State. He was a 5-star recruit. His freshman year, he was the bell cow and he was awesome. But then the next 2 years, when they tried to have him be the bell cow, he got injured both seasons, and both seasons just injury ravaged. And then this past year, they were able to bring in Quinshon Judkins. They gave him the bag in the transfer portal. And Travion Henderson, he played all 16 games during the run to the national title. But it was in a mix and match committee type thing where Henderson, it was more, he was averaging like 11 touches per game. You kept him healthy and you got the explosive plays. Like the play he made it right before halftime against Texas in the semis, the 75-yard delayed screen touchdown. If that play doesn't happen, we could have had a sliding doors moment where maybe Texas is the one moving on. We have a whole different reality there in the college football playoff. That you need to preserve Travion Henderson late into the season for that, the team that you're taking him. So I do expect that team to have some sort of early down between the tackles, meat and potatoes type guy. But Travion Henderson is going to rack up plenty of yards at the NFL level because he brings you the explosive plays.
Yeah, it feels like a guy, Jake, you've been doing our comps today, but I've seen, if he gets 12 to 15 touches, he can make as much out of those 12 to 15 like James Cook. So I just, that's my comp since you're doing our comps today, maybe.
So recent. I mean, I would have personally went with some guy from the 1990s, but that's fine.
It's fine. Well, I'll get better as the show goes on here. Before we continue on, let's hear from our friends over at DraftKings. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With all the new ways to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook, from monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Here's something special for first timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. All right, moving right along here, Thor, you are now on the clock with the 9th overall pick in this Dynasty rookie draft post NFL Combine here. So where are you looking? Who are you looking at here?
I'm going to take Travion Henderson's teammate, Quinshon Judkins. And by the way, for your 90s comp, Jake, I had Clinton Portis on Travion Henderson. But we're going to take Quinshon Judkins with this pick. This is the last of your big four running backs in the class, so I sort of felt like I had to take him. Quinshon Judkins was extremely impressed with his performance at the NFL Combine. He ran the 4.48 40, 11-foot broad jump was incredible, 38.5 vertical. Came in more athletic than we thought, 9.89 RAS for Quinshon Judkins. And the production speaks for itself, the 2 years at Ole Miss, and then last year on the national champ Ohio State.
Jake, I was going to ask you, between these two Ohio State running backs, it seems like it could be up for debate, because when I was looking everywhere, both of these guys were maybe interchangeable. Is this the way that you would go?
The only slight delineation that I have between these two is just who is more likely to rack up 50 catches in a year. And that's going to be Henderson for me. That's not going to be Judkins. So in most of the formats that I play in, I always give that a little extra credence. But I will say more and more recently, I think it's becoming razor thin, the difference between these two.
All right. Well, you are now on the clock with the 10th overall pick. We're expecting a 90s, maybe 80s comp here with it as well, now that you have to do that throughout the whole show. But who are you looking at here?
Really set myself up for disappointment, didn't I? But this is a guy who I was looking at a few spots earlier when I did take Matthew Golden. And the one thing that I thought about was Golden could be a wide receiver one on a team. I'm not sure that Trey Harris, who's going to be my selection here, would necessarily be able to be that guy. But, you know, he does have the size. He has the speed. He has the ability to change speed very quickly. I think the big also risk with him is just the injuries that he's unfortunately put together. If he can get beyond that, I really like this guy. I think he'll be a QB's best friend just because of the way that he's so efficient at working his way back to the ball. And I can think of a number of either young or shaky quarterbacks in the NFL right now that could use a guy like that on their team. I'm not going to say that Geno Smith is that guy, but we did say any future wide receivers in this draft should go to the Seahawks, so we can keep that up too.
You can say it. It's totally fine. But I like Trey Harris. You know, he's quick, right? More on quickness than speed than anything else, but could immediately, Thor, when you look at him, do you think that that's someone that could kind of immediately come in and contribute to an NFL team?
Yeah, I mean, Trey Harris is polished, and speaking of being the number one option, that's what he was at Ole Miss. They just pounded him with targets. That's the biggest question on Jackson Dart's evaluation. He just forced the ball to Trey Harris every single time. But Trey Harris, he has the physical package you're looking for, 6'2.5", 205, and he tested decently, right? Like, I mean, in terms of the RAS, great. He was 90th percentile size adjusted athlete. The 4.54 40, some people are nitpicking that a little bit, but again, it's a bigger receiver. If the jumps were there, the rest of the athletic profile was there. Trey Harris is a skilled receiver, and yeah, I expect him to start immediately.
All right. Well, since you guys left me, I've got the 11th pick now. And since you left me with, to me, in my opinion, the best tight end in the draft this year, I'm going to go ahead and take Tyler Warren out of Penn State because I can. And I want him on my team no matter where he goes. So he is like Warren. 6'6", right? He is he's a beast to me, 260 pounds, and has been referred to as like this do everything tight end, right? You look at him, he can be a matchup nightmare for you if he's going in the slot. He's a pretty good blocker, Thor. We can talk about that here in a little bit, but he had 98 catches, only 3 drops in 2024. So to me, when we're looking at tight ends and how deep this draft class is, and I think that's important to note, is that this is a deeper tight end class, which makes it exciting for us in fantasy football. And it did make me think, well, maybe I could wait for a Colston Loveland or maybe someone else down the line. But I don't know. To me, looking at Tyler Warren on the board still, I kind of just had to take him. And I'm curious, Jake, when you look at these tight ends too, we almost have to stop thinking about these tight ends not being fantasy viable in their first season, because for the past 2 seasons, it's been proven wrong. Historically, that was correct. But now, we've got Sam Laporta and then we had Brock Bowers last year. So who's to say that maybe a Tyler Warren, maybe even a Colston Loveland can't do the same thing?
It's so funny you said that, because in my previous pick, I saw Tyler Warren sitting there. I was like, this would be a great option, obviously, to take here. I still have just a little gnawing thing in the back of my head that says, what if this guy turns into Dalton Kincaid? Which I don't think will be the case with Tyler Warren. He's much more well-rounded, and he's more likely to be maybe a mixture of Kincaid and Dawson Knox and be able to bring together the real-life NFL viability with the fantasy utility that we look at. But it's always in the back of my mind. So I'm probably going to be a second-round tight end guy in my drafts. All
right. Thor, is he closer to Dalton Kincaid? Please say no. Or is he closer to Brock Bowers for production?
I would say the latter, because you have, and for me, it's a combination of Jeremy Shockey and Bowers, right? Like as a receiver, the size and the movement and the skill that you have there, that evokes Jeremy Shockey. And then the manufactured touch stuff that you get with Warren, that's what evokes Bowers. They handed him the ball off so much last year, shipped him into the backfield, the end arounds, used him on the trick plays like we talked about. You can do so many different things with Tyler Warren to get that ball into his hands. And at that point, you have a 6'5.5", 256 or 260-pound berserker upfield, tackle breaking berserker. So I thought it was a good pick, Kendall.
All right. I'm
You had
hoping
me at
more for
Jeremy
the Brock.
Shockey.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping more for the Brock Bowers, Jeremy Shockey than saying it was anyone else. Dalton Kincaid. Oh, Jake, you're breaking my heart. All right, Thor, it's back to you. 12th pick. Where are you going?
I'm going with a guy who has another shiny 1990s comp for Jake. I'm taking Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who I compared to Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson back in the day at Penn State. A big back who, when he gets out into the open field, he is difficult to catch, and you don't want to get in front of him. He measured in, Johnson did at the combine, 6'1", 224 pounds. The 4.57 was disappointing, but he hit 22 miles per hour on the GPS during that run, which he had also hit last year on the field at Iowa. Caleb Johnson does not have the quick burst acceleration, like right out the get on the concept, but in the zone systems that he is a fit for, you think about the thing picking down the line, the vision, the manipulating the second level defenders to have to declare their gap before you. It's something that for you sort of gives you the spacing to get that runway to get up to top speed, getting up through the into the second level. Caleb Johnson, a lot of times he has done the work in advance to take care of the linebackers before he gets into that hole. And then you can start taking the steps in your runway to get to that top speed. I think Caleb Johnson going to fall a little bit because of that 40 in the draft and in fantasy drafts. And I think that's going to make him a great value in both. This is a really, really good player.
I forgot you were at the 1-2 turn, so now you're back on the board. Let me ask one question about Caleb Johnson here really quickly before we get to your second one. Does his lack of receiving production, do you think that could limit his upside for us in Dynasty and fantasy football in the NFL?
No, I don't, because he showed more as a receiver last year than, for instance, Leonard Fournette did it all 3 seasons at LSU, and Leonard Fournette was catching 65 to 70 balls in the NFL, when the seasons when he was fully healthy. Caleb Johnson as a receiver, it's very similar to Amari and Hampton, where all they do, it's checkdowns, screens, and swings, but you're looking to get them in space with a convoy in front of them, and both those guys are nasty, and they're very difficult for defensive backs to deal with in space, especially if they first have to get around a blocker in front of them. So that's the receiving utility that you get with him. It's basically running after the catch after you manufactured a touch for him. But like I said, very similar to Hampton, and no, not a concern for me.
All right, so now you're still on the board here. 1-2 turn. Who are you going with?
We're the Big Ten run continues. We're going to take Colson Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. Since you sniped me on the other tight end, Kendall, but Colson Loveland, this is the guy who, you're going to have a fear about Dalton Kincaid. That would be more my fear with a guy like Loveland, because with the size package that you have, this is probably going to be a big slot, pretty close to pure receiver in the NFL. He can play in line, but that's not where you're going to get value out of Colson Loveland. I would love to have the blocking tight end with him during the national title run at Michigan. They had A.J. Barner as the inline guy. A.J. Barner is basically a third offensive tackle, and who was then taken by your Seattle Seahawks, Kendall. But that allowed Colson Loveland just to be the super duper skilled receiver that he is. He was the number 1 receiver on the national title winning Michigan Wolverines in 2023. He's just a big slot, super duper skilled receiver. That's what he's more skilled as a receiver than Tyler Warren is, I think. It's just not the same physical package and the same athletic profile.
Again, a deep tight end class. So it's kind of exciting to be able to see some of these guys and think to yourself down the line, like, I can maybe wait on some more talent, even more talented tight ends, even going into the second round. So I like that one. I'm on the board here, and I'll start some chaos and just go ahead and take Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, to leave you two to fight for the other quarterback, who I'm sure we're going to talk about here quickly. Listen, Cam Ward is 1 on some boards, 2 on others, like our one and only Thor Nystrom right here. And so for me, he's improved every step of the way. And I really liked what, we've been talking about on this show, just what he's shown in his college career and what he could potentially do in the NFL. I know, Thor, your latest mock draft, and you have a new one coming out soon, had him going to the Giants, but I'm going to take a quarterback off the board because there's still one on here. And I think Cam Ward is a solid QB1 in this draft class. So that's where I'm going to go. Jake, you're on the board next. Where are you going?
Oh, well, I'm not going to go quarterback. I'm not going to fall
right.
susceptible to this push to force me to that guy, but I do have an eye on him. I'm going to go once again at wide receiver. I'm living my draft philosophy, my strategy. I'm going to prefer the wide receivers over the running backs. I'm going with Alec Iomanner at 203. I just want to throw this out there. This is one of the only guys in college who really kind of got the better of Travis Hunter. I don't want to put too much stock, of course, into a single game, but you go back and you watch his play against Colorado back in 2023. I mean, it's borderline magical to see, like 294 yards, I think it was. It just showcased his versatility because he can be a vertical threat. He can get those contested catches. He can work in the middle of the field. But don't you dare call him a slot merchant a la Michael Thomas, although he did plenty of that in that game as well. I just think it showed that he can show up on any NFL team and they can figure out a way to keep him out on the field for as long as possible. I don't think we have to worry about this guy, taking too many snaps off.
I like that pick, and maybe Thor seems like someone that's not going to be taken in the first round, right? His fantasy value is largely, like Jake just said, probably going to depend on the landing spot.
Yeah, but yeah, I like Iomanor. I have him as wide receiver 5 in this class. You're 6'2", 206, and he ran the 4.44 40. He can get downtown and he can make plays on the ball. Like Jake was talking about, as Travis Hunter could attest to. Iomanor put him in a body bag in that game, and that was the first time we had seen Travis Hunter abused like that. But yeah, I mean, he can make the plays down the field. It's funny, at Iomanor's podium session, I asked him, I said, you're coming from Canada and then you went to a school that wasn't really good. I mean, I said it in a nicer way, but wasn't really good throwing the football. Like, do you view the combine as sort of your opportunity to have a coming out party? And he just sort of smiled and with, he started talking about his track background and and that sort of stuff. And he ends up running the 4.44. He had the 38.5 vertical jump. This is a really good athlete who, again, can make plays down the field, and he has done it against some good players. So I like the pick of Iomanor here.
And Jake didn't take the quarterback bait, so I thought he might. I didn't know what he was going to do with it, but that's fine. That's why he's the professional here. So let's keep going here. You're back on the clock, Thor. Who are you looking at?
I'm gonna, and nobody can accuse me of being a homer here. I feel like this is good value. I'm taking Devin Neal from the Fighting Rock Chalkers at Lawrence, Kansas. Devin Neal, one of the best set of feet you'll see at 220 pounds. He makes people miss. He's just so good between the tackles, changing the angles on people right there. He can run through the arm tackles. And then this is a guy who's going to be a better receiver at the NFL level than he was at Kansas. They used him as a check down guy. They had 3 starting veteran senior receivers and then a senior tight end as well. And so the passing concepts, he inevitably was a tertiary option on that. But when we have seen Devin Neal allowed to run routes down the field, he shakes people. It's the same thing with the footwork. You can't stay with Devin Neal's feet. So it's a good player who I think is going to start in the NFL for a long time. So we're going to take Devin Neal here.
Oh, that's a solid one. I like that one a lot. Before we continue on here, maybe with another running back coming up, because I am on the board, let's go talk to our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, back on the board over here as we continue on through our Dynasty rookie draft, post-combine rookie Dynasty draft over here. I am on the board, and I will say, unlike Thor, I will admit it, this is a homer pick. I went to Arizona State. I can't leave Cam Scatterbo out there all alone. It might be too early, and I just don't care. I am going to continue drafting Cam Scatterbo until the NFL actually tells me that I should stop, because I just believe, I know we can talk about the combine, how he didn't run, how he didn't show up for podium. And there are some things that are a little bit of a red flag. We can talk about the other good things, talk about his vertical there and what he was able to do. But he is a hard runner, I think, depending on where he goes. And even not so much depending, like his landing spot to me doesn't matter as much. I just think Cam Scatterbo is going to be really good in the NFL. And again, this is a homer pick, and I'm just trying really hard to believe it. But just from what we've seen, you can put on the tape, he didn't need to do much at the combine. Just put on everything that he's done with Arizona State, and you're going to see someone that runs hard and I think could be in a really solid role. So Jake, thank you so much for not taking him, but Yeah, I need Cam Scadaboo on my team. Jake, you can say nice things about Cam if you want, or you could say that this was dumb. Whichever way you want to go.
I mean, there's not a chance I'm going to say anything negative about this man and be willing to incur the wrath from Kendall. So I will just simply add here, I actually think it's great value, but I do think it speaks to the depth of this running back class that somebody like this would even fall to the middle of the second round. Last year, certainly we wouldn't have been seeing the same thing.
Yeah, and we've got a bet, Thor and I do, and I think it's just a bet that is good for both of us. But if Cam ends up with the Minnesota Vikings, I did agree that I would get a jersey. So the next time we do this, I'll have a Cam jersey on, and it'll be absolutely fantastic. So just going to throw that one out there. But Jake, you are back on the board. So who are you going to go with here?
I didn't take the bait for quarterback when you were trying to push a quarterback run last time, but I think I am going to feel the bullying and take another running back because I don't want to allow this guy to slip any further. I'm taking Bashal Tutin here at the 206. Again, I'll keep saying it. The depth of this running back class is really incredible. And obviously could not have a guy that's, more different than the two previous running backs probably drafted. But I will say Thor called him one of the post-combine risers and dubbed him the day's brightest star. The fact that this guy at 20 pounds or almost 20 pounds more than Devin Achane still managed to match his speed at the 40-yard dash, I think says a lot about this guy. I hope that Miami doesn't get the bright idea to draft him as well and pair some lightning with mega lightning. But I think, there's about 3/4 of the NFL that can find a nice way to make him extremely fantasy relevant.
Thor, we know your thoughts on Tutin. It feels like the same as Jake's over here. Like everyone seems to be getting on board with Bashal Tutin.
For sure. Yeah. A crazy explosive player. We saw that the last 2 years at Virginia Tech after he came up from North Carolina A&T in the FCS, proved the concept on the field. And then he goes out and tests as one of the more athletic running backs that we've seen past decade. Jake was mentioning that he matched the 40 time of Devin Achane, but 20 pounds heavier. You come in at 206 and do that. He also, his vertical was over 40 inches. This kid is an insane athlete. And again, it manifests on the field. You get the explosive plays out of him. But while you get the peaks, you also have to deal with the valleys. He had 9 fumbles over the last 2 years. Got to improve the ball security. But as far as the big play threat, he is one of the biggest ones in this running back class.
I love it. A really. What was your nickname for him at the combine? King Tutin. King Tutin. There we go. Let's make it happen here during this draft. Thor, speaking of, you're back on the clock here. So I'm curious if you're going to keep with the running back run here, or are you going to go somewhere else?
Now we went from King Tutin to the first Noel taken here. I'm taking Jalen Noel, the Iowa State slot receiver, with this pick. Noel, I loved him in college. In Ames, he played next to Jaden Higgins, and they were so good. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl. Nobody could cover him in the one-on-ones. And then he goes to the combine. He tested way better than we thought he would. 97th percentile size-adjusted athlete, 4'3", 940. He had a 41.5-inch vertical. He had over an 11-foot broad. He even led the receiver class in the bench press. He was one of 5 receivers that did every single test at the combine. And to come out with that 97th percentile RAS score was very, very impressive. Now, this is a slot-only receiver, but this is a slot receiver that is going to start for a decade plus in the NFL. He is that good. And so, I'm happy to take him here. He is going to catch a lot of balls in the NFL.
I like that one. So I was sniped again, so it's totally fine. Everything's going fine. Oh, I'm going to go with Isaiah Bond here. And Thor, I don't want to hear it yet. Just let me talk this out and let me see if I can make this a little bit better, because now that I've said his name out loud, I hate it, but that's totally fine. 5'11", 180. And he just, oh man, he had a bad combine showing. And it was just, he thought that he was going to be able to challenge Xavier Worthy's 40-yard dash, and obviously wasn't able to do that. I think it was way slower than anyone anticipated. And I know that, when we've talked about this and looked through him and his tape, like he's a raw receiver. So I want to believe that there are some traits that in the NFL could maybe turn him into a solid receiver, especially when we're looking at him in a dynasty perspective. Maybe take a little bit of time. I know that this is someone that's not going to immediately produce. Again, Thor, you know what? I'm going to ask Jake, because Jake's going to be nicer to me about this, because I know, Thor, how you feel about Bond. So, Jake, what do you think here with Isaiah Bond?
I want to say this, especially about his comments at the Combine. I want my NFL players to have mega confidence. Even if they don't live up to that confidence, I want them to come out and say stuff like that and believe it themselves. And I know he believed it. It didn't work out. But you know what? I hope that day one of his start with another NFL team, he comes out and says exactly that type of thing and actually does exceed it. So props to him.
Gosh, Thor, he was so slow. What am I doing? What's going on? It's fine.
Yeah. He did have a 4.39. It wasn't the 4.1s that he said he was going to run in, but Isaiah Bond, he's raw, but the flashes we have seen from him and some of the best flashes we've seen in the class, you got to go back to 2023 Alabama. I don't know what happened to Isaiah Bond last year. I mean, he was nicked up, but then even when he came back, it's like he couldn't get back in the good grade. He was in the doghouse. They were starting a freshman at receiver late there in the season for Texas. But you have the physical tools here. As far as the movement is high end for Isaiah Bond. But yeah, I was kind of surprised, that he didn't do more of the testing. He just did that 40, which is a disappointment based on the hype that he was accelerating with his comments. Why didn't you do more tests? We'll have to see in Austin when he tests, but this is a really good athlete.
All right. Thank you for making me feel better, both of you. Jake, I know I didn't snipe your next player probably because you weren't circling Isaiah Bond on your draft right now. So who are you going to go with here?
I did not highlight Bond's name. I was happy. Well, I was happy to have one of the Iowa State guys left. Did I get the first Noel? No, but I have Jaden Higgins sitting here, so I'm going to take him at 209. If I'm going to do a comp for this guy, it's probably something more along the lines of Mike Williams, except when Mike Williams doesn't do a backflip and land on his kidneys for every catch. So I hope that he can come out and be the contested catch guy that I think he will be. And, he absolutely crushes against man coverage. Again, there's definitely a spot for a guy like this on an NFL team that would boost him up to the, wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 36 range in fantasy. You're going to have to deal with some inconsistencies, but I think the upside is definitely worth it here.
Yeah, it feels like someone that could develop into that wide receiver one eventually for an NFL team. So I like that one. All right, Thor, back on the clock. Who are you going to go with?
I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders. He falls all the way down here. I'm happy to pop Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in the class. And the guff he gets, I think is ridiculous. His podium session, I love this stuff that Shedeur Sanders is saying at his podium session. So it seems like what your opinion of Shedeur Sanders is, like the person, it's one of those like Rorschach things where it says more about you than it does about Shedeur Sanders. But the game of Shedeur Sanders is what I'm most attracted to. Utterly elite accuracy. And I think that the criticism he gets for holding on to the ball too long, I think it's super unfair. He played behind Swiss cheese offensive lines the last 2 years at Colorado. He has some of the best pocket presence you'll see under duress. And he has the athleticism to escape. He doesn't use his athleticism to run out of escape containment and run down the field. He uses it to make people miss, buy more time for his wide receivers, and then he can hit you on the hands no matter where you are in the field. He can put that ball wherever he wants it. I'm a huge fan of Shedeur Sanders and happy to get him here in the second.
That's a good pick. I'm with you. There's a lot of talk going around with him. So I like his game. I like the confidence too. Like we were talking about confidence here earlier. So I think that's what you get when you get Shedeur Sanders. All right, I am back on the clock, and I'm going to try and make up for my Isaiah Bond pick, and I'm going to go with Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State here. And he was one of the performances that we liked coming out of the combine as well. 6 foot, 205 pounds, 4.42 40-yard dash. So someone that's kind of been, I've kept an eye on him a little bit, but then after what we saw just a couple of weeks ago, I kind of really like him here. So that's where I'm going to go and make up for my Isaiah Bond pick. So that leaves you, Jake, with our final pick in the draft. Who are you taking?
I get to open us up and close us out. I'm so honored. I think this is an area in most Dynasty rookie drafts where we're going to see a ton of running backs start to fly off the board from here, probably all the way through the third round. I'm happy to take my favorite guy of the mix, Ollie Gordon, here at 212. I will say this about him. it's probably oversaid, but a lot of these guys coming out this year, if you transported them back to the 2024 draft class, they'd be much higher at the top of the board. And I think Ollie at least has that sort of Le'Veon Bell-esque level of patience. I am not comparing him beyond that to Le'Veon Bell, but I do think that's a very important trait as long as you get a really effective offensive line. So I'll be very curious to see where Ollie ends up in the NFL draft. This is probably one of the guys that's the most landing spot dependent for me, but I'm excited to see what bears out.
I like it. So as you can see on the screen, we have just finished our post-combine Dynasty rookie mock draft here and had a ton of fun while doing it. So Jake, I want to ask you, your biggest takeaways for people maybe just starting up some Dynasty drafts, doing some mocks, and kind of what you're expecting this season. I know we've talked about it throughout this show, but kind of your biggest takeaways in Dynasty mock drafts right now.
For me, it's become so important with this year's class to really make sure that you don't have just a ranking set, but that you have your room with some of these guys. Make actual tiers, chunk these guys together, because I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, again, for trades to happen this year in your rookie drafts. If you've got 5 guys that you're psyched about on the board still, see if you can push it back a little bit, get some extra value, especially with these running backs. I think it's important to have groups, not just rankings.
All right, Thor, same question to you. Or what should people know about this incoming rookie class?
Oh, just that the running back class is sick. If you don't need a running back this year, maybe consider trading or a tight end. Maybe consider trading into next year. But if you need the running backs, this is the year to stock up on that.
All right, I like it. Thor, who was your favorite pick out of this mock? You can say one of yours. It's fine.
No, Cam Scadaboo for sure.
Yeah.
No, just
see, this is fun. Oh, you can't say just kidding now. I thought you were serious.
No.
Dang it.
No. I like Cam. I liked your Trey Henderson pick, the one before that. But I have a question. Jake, can you grade my draft as Moira from Schitt's Creek and give some analysis on my draft?
Oh wow, that's a lot of pressure that you put on me here, Thor. Let me take a look, put on my Moira rose-colored glasses and see what I can look at here. Well, you certainly were pretty expedient with some of these picks. Certainly didn't seem like you had to take too much time to make them. Maybe that's good. Maybe it won't end up so good. We'll have to see.
Incredible.
That's incredible. I mean, it's just so good. I love it. Well, this was oh my gosh, this was so much fun. Jake, you could have been doing that the whole time. What, we totally missed on an opportunity
really wimped
here.
out, man.
Oh my gosh. All right, we'll save it for next time. And just do a whole impressions-based mock draft here. Appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out with us here today.